I started my painting journey with watercolors because it felt like the safest type of paint to do at home from a mess and cleanup perspective. Somewhere along the line, I learned about gouache paint, which is a close relative to watercolor. I had a set for a really long time that I didn't like because it felt really messy. When I set up my art corner last year, I decided I wanted to try gouache again, and I got myself a large set of gouache in tubes because it felt less messy. It cost about $27 for 36 tubes of paint, and I thought that was a good deal. It had a lot of different colors, and I really don't like mixing paint colors. I didn't go to art school, and I don't have a great grasp of color theory. Like when I mix blue and red, I never quite get purple, or not what I picture as purple. It always looks a little bit muddy, even when I'm using a perfectly clean water on a perfectly clean brush. So I like that the set had a whole bunch of pre-mixed colors that I didn't have to think too hard about. But then I see these other gouache painters on here painting layers on layers, and their layers seem more opaque than mine. And I ask myself why I can't get my gouache to be quite so opaque. It honestly just feels like I'm painting with a brighter watercolor when I use it. So I decided to spend a little money and try some different gouache paints this year. Winsor&Newton is a brand I recognize from some previous online beginner watercolor groups that I was in. And so I thought that I would try a couple of different types of their paints. I also decided to try a couple of their paint brushes. So this will begin a short series of testing out some different paints and brushes to see, is the extra money worth it? Does my gouache become more opaque when I spend more money? Do my paintings become more beautiful? I did spend my own money on all of these supplies. This is not sponsored. I am not even making money on posting these videos. I just want to share what I'm learning while I'm on my journey, and I hope that it helps others interested in painting with gouache too. Feel free to follow along by clicking the buttons and watching as I share what I learned from this process. All right, we're going to start the series off with unboxing the Winsor& Newton Designer's Gouache. I paid about 63 US dollars for the set of 10 tubes of 14 milliliters or 0.47 US fluid ounces of paint. There is also a set of 6 available for about 44 US dollars right now. I noticed almost immediately while unboxing the set that they are clearly not trying to save space or reduce packaging for this. Each tube has its own special place in the package and nothing is touching. The box itself is pretty sturdy, so I think it's something I'll be able to keep using for a while, which is nice. The colors included in the set of 10 are Primary Yellow, Permanent Yellow Deep, Spectrum Red, Primary Red, Ultramarine, Primary Blue, Permanent Green Middle, Yellow Ochre, Ivory Black, and Zinc White. Winsor& Newton is a company based out of London, and this set was made in France. The description on the back of the box reads, "Designer's gouache colors are made from the finest pigments, offering vibrant, opaque watercolors with a smooth matte finish." The colors seem to me to come out of the tube a little thick. While there is 10 colors in the set, I was trying to test mostly the primary colors and the white since I wanted to test this against a less expensive Winsor& Newton gouache. I am not a trained artist, and so my color theory hasn't quite developed, and I don't feel great about mixing colors. If I like this set and wanted to keep using it, I'd likely end up having to buy more pre-mixed colors that they have available, like purple. There are something like 90 individual tubes available in this size that currently range in price from around 12 US dollars to about 25 US dollars per tube. This definitely feels like a luxury to me since this is more of a hobby or a way to relax than a business. Some people may compare this cost to something like therapy, in which case you could probably justify a couple of tubes per week as an alternative to therapy copays in the US. So depending on how you look at it, you could decide for yourself whether this is worth the investment. In the next video, we'll unbox the Winsor& Newton gouache set that costs about 1/3 the price of this set, and after that, we'll compare the primary colors from the two sets. Follow along if you're interested in seeing more. For the next part of our series, we'll unbox the less expensive 21 US dollar Winsor& Newton gouache set. This set comes with 10 tubes of 12 milliliters, or about 0.4 US fluid ounces of paint. I was unable to find other sets or individual tubes of the same level and brand available on a quick search. Being someone without formal training on color theory and who struggles to mix basic secondary colors, I'm not sure how I'd use this set without being able to buy more colors because I love painting with pinks and purples. We're still going to go ahead and try this set out. I'm sure if I wanted to spend a little more time researching, I could probably find these tubes or a larger set somewhere over the rainbow. I noticed quickly the packaging is quite a bit different, with all of the gouache tubes packed into this box like little sardines. There is a lot less wasted space in this packaging. However, the material of the packaging feels like it will easily rip after a few opens and closes. I generally like to keep the material in the box that it came in for storage for paints like this, but I'll probably end up someday just throwing all of these colors together in the designer's gouache box because it's a sturdier box and something that I think will last longer. The colors included in this set include opaque white, primary yellow, medium yellow, vermilion, primary red, ultramarine, primary blue, medium green, burnt sienna, and black. Winsor&Newton is a company based out of London, and this set was made in France. The description on the back of the box reads, Winsor&Newton gouache provides excellent coverage and creates a vibrant, opaque matte finish. The colors in this set come out of the tube really, really smooth. It felt nice. It felt like I had a bit more control of what was coming out of the tube when compared to the designer's set. Since I am trying to compare to the designer set, I'm only using the primary colors and white from this set. Ultimately, the question I am trying to answer in this series is, can I get a more opaque result by using a more expensive set or brand that is considered a higher quality? I'm also interested in how it feels to work with it. Do I feel like I can get better results from my painting by using this gouache instead of my less expensive set of 36 tubes that cost me only 27 US dollars? We'll look at that all together in the next video. Follow along for more. In this part of the series, we're comparing two different gouache sets from Winsor&Newton. Let's see how they stack up. I am interested in trying to see if a more expensive gouache with a more recognizable brand would give me a more opaque or more desirable results when painting. When I add water to the designer set, it does take a bit of effort for the water to incorporate and for the colors to become usable for painting. What I like though is that when the water is incorporated, the color looks very consistent. I am not seeing much, if any, separation of the pigments. On the other hand, when I add water to the regular gouache set, it seems to take a lot less effort for the water to incorporate. I also noticed that it came out of the tube much smoother while unboxing it, and to that end, I have to assume whatever is in the tube is just a bit more wet to begin with. I did notice though that while I was mixing the colors, it did seem like there was some separation of the pigments. It's hardly noticeable, if at all, on camera, but it was something I noticed while doing it. It's not more separation than what I would notice with my current set, but at this point, I'm just going to keep mixing it, give it some time to see what I think about it after it's on the paper. So I'm swatching each primary color and also the primary colors mixed with their respective whites noted in the unboxing videos. The idea behind this for me was that sometimes I feel like watercolor becomes more opaque when mixed with white, and I wanted to see how opaque we could make these gouache paints, since that is one of my primary motivators. I wasn't very happy with the opacity of the designer's gouache primary red color and figured it's because of my lack of science with the balance of water and paint, so I did eventually add some more paint to the swatch, and it feels like that is really what did it. It was the difference maker on how to get a more opaque color for this. The Winsor&Newton gouache is about 21 US dollars compared to the Winsor&Newton designer's gouache that costs 3 times as much at about 63 US dollars today. I haven't yet found comparable large sets of the regular gouache, but for the designer's gouache paint, you can also buy additional tubes of other colors like purple for between $12 and $25 per tube. If you compare this to the set of 36 I already had, that I spent 27 US dollars on, that would be between $375 and $900 in gouache paints. If I were to buy more colors, I may not buy all 36 colors that I have in my set, but it's a worthy comparison point for someone like myself that is not classically trained, didn't go to art school, and I'm not making money from my art. I'm curious, for someone who uses a higher quality paints, what brand do you use? Is it Winsor&Newton? Do you spend the $900 to get all the different colors and shades, or do you mix your own colors? I decided to spend 18 US dollars on this Winsor&Newton professional watercolor quill brush to see how it stacks up to my current brushes. I've bought different brushes for my watercolor and acrylic painting over the years. I've had some sets where the brush hair seemed to just fall out, which can really just feel like it ruins a painting, or even if you're able to get the hair out carefully without messing up the painting, it still ruins the joy of painting to me. I have bought a variety of 15 to 25 piece brush sets, all for under $30 a piece over the last few years. So, if I have all of these brushes, why would I spend $18 on a single brush? Honestly, maybe because I was curious and maybe because I'm a sucker. I don't know. As I was looking at the Winsor& Newton gouache paints, I saw their watercolor paper and their watercolor brushes. And I have paper I'm really happy with, but as long as I was looking at their brushes, I saw that they had a brush for $125. And I thought that was super expensive. And then I looked further and I saw that they had a brush for 464 US dollars. Now, look, I know the US has been facing a lot of tariffs now as a result of the current administration, but I'm pretty sure that $464 wasn't just because of tariffs. I went on to read about Queen Victoria and thought to myself, wow, that brush is an investment. And I'm not ready to invest over $400 or even $100 as a paintbrush. It's probably not going to come with any guarantees of better paintings or future as a famous painter. I was willing to consider investing 20-ish dollars on a paintbrush. So I was curious if this brush was worth it. Would I be able to follow my inspiration more readily with a fancy brush? Will it hold up better when I'm painting? Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. This brush is a size 0, and I think that I expected it to be a lot smaller than it is. I also bought a size 6 brush, which is going to be great for large washes because it's very big. So these quill brushes do pick up a lot of paint, and they're great at getting that paint on the paper. So I do think I'll be making really good use of these brushes each time I paint. What is your favorite paintbrush? Have you ever spent $100 or more on a single paintbrush? Was it worth it? Let me know in the comments and press the buttons to follow along as I continue going down this journey. So, while the Winsor& Newton gouache does feel more vibrant than watercolor alone, I think the difference in opacity really comes down to how much pigment you're able to get on your brush and put on the paper rather than the brand or cost of the gouache. I also think that some of the videos I've seen from other creators may be using acrylic gouache. When you use pure gouache, it will reactivate when you add more water to the painting or add more layers. When using watercolor, people generally work from light to dark because if you don't, the water from adding layers on top of darker layers can make some of the colors look a little muddy if you're not careful. So the way that folks are painting with dark to light in some of these gouache videos I've seen doesn't seem to be possible with pure gouache. Acrylic gouache, on the other hand, will not reactivate when it's dry, so it is possible to layer on colors like that. And I just think it's good to adjust your expectations when you're working with pure gouache if you're following along with some of these other videos. Ultimately, for me, paying the extra money probably isn't going to be worth it in the long run for these designer gouache colors. I'm not sure that my art will be hanging from a gallery or will create any sort of income to offset the costs. I think following the inspiration I have is more important than the quality of paints that I am able to afford. I also knew that I would always wonder whether I would like my paintings more if I didn't give it at least one shot using a more expensive brand. For me, it's more important to have those premixed colors than it is to have the best pigments on the market. On the other hand, while the quill paintbrush was similarly more expensive, I do think that I'll get really good use out of this brush. I definitely see myself reaching for this brush every time I paint. You can get a large wash or fine lines depending on how hard you press, and I think that this will offer a lot of variety in my paintings. I also didn't seem to experience any hairs falling out with this one, which seems consistent with the price point. And when I washed the brush and shaped it and let it dry flat, it looks just like it did when I opened it from the package. So I do think that this one is a win for me, but I think that everyone has to consider the cost and benefits for themselves. Are you someone that loves gouache? What is your favorite brand of gouache paint? And what is your favorite style of paintbrush for your gouache painting? Let me know in the comments, and you know what to do if you want to see more videos like this from me.